Hello and welcome to The World This Week with Alicia Edwards. A look back at some of the biggest global news stories for an international city, brought to you by the London Live News team. On the way, the medics in Kiev calling their hospital home as attacks on the city continue. We look at the impact of the war on the animals of Ukraine, as many are injured fleeing the country. And as China pushes on with its zero COVID strategy, Shanghai plunges back into lockdown. All of that to come in our programme this morning. But first, as we enter the 6th week of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, at the time of recording, these were some of the latest lines coming from the conflict. President Zelensky has accused Russia of blocking humanitarian corridors from the besieged city of Mariupol. In a video address to the Belgian Parliament, he asked lawmakers for more help.
Mariupol has been completely sieged for 3 weeks. Russian forces have closed all entries to the city and blocked the approach from the sea. You know everything and every detail. There is nothing there. No food, no water, no medicament. There is no life there. There is nothing that is necessary for having any kind of life. Every day we are trying to do everything to ensure the work of humanitarian corridors from Mariupol to evacuate civilians remaining in the city, including women, children and elderly people. Partly we managed to do it, but in most of cases Russian forces do not let people go to free Ukrainian territory and do not let any humanitarian convoys enter Mariupol.
President Zelensky there, and Russia had declared it was to drastically scale down its military operation in parts of Ukraine on Tuesday, but fighting has continued in the northeastern city of Kharkiv in recent days. Parts of the city have been destroyed by Russian shelling, and Ukraine's president warned in an address that the situation remains tense in the city and its surrounding suburbs. Kharkiv's hospital staff have continued on with their work amid Russia's shelling of the city. During the first days of the invasion, medics were transporting patients to the basement of the hospital, but as the fighting continued, it became too difficult to move patients back and forth. Medics there said they drown out the sound of shelling with hard rock and jazz music.
All windows and curtains are closed. As we're working on the 4th floor, the risk is quite high that shelling can hurt us and patients. To relax mentally a little bit, we're listening to hard rock in the first half of the day and jazz in the second, and we put the music on loud. It's essential to ensure that our hands are not trembling during the explosions, but I think we've gotten used to it now.
A teacher at one of the city's schools, Alexander Likovit, said he spent 11 days moving from one shelter to another until he settled with his cat here at the hospital. He says here, "We are not going back there. It's very dangerous." Many doctors are also living in the hospital now as the treacherous journey home is no longer safe. To Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine now, where a Russian strike on a government building this week killed 15 people and injured as many as 40 others. Kim Vitalai, the head of Mykolaiv's regional government, called on foreign companies and those in other parts of Ukraine to help the town by buying locally made products, saying this would ease what he described as the catastrophic economic situation. Mykolaiv, which has resisted the Russian offensive for weeks, is considered a key point for Russians if they are to take Odessa by land and control the region of the Black Sea. From yesterday, a decree from the Kremlin, which was published by state media on Thursday, said countries which have imposed sanctions on Russia can continue to pay for natural gas in foreign currency through a Russian bank that will convert the money to rubles. He said contracts will be stopped if buyers didn't sign up to the new conditions, including opening ruble accounts in Russian banks. Well, Germany and France immediately came out to say they rejected Russia's demand for gas payments to be made this way. And when asked whether the UK would accept Russia's demand, a spokesman for the Prime Minister said it was not something it would be looking into. Here, Ukrainians cross the border into Poland on foot in the pouring rain at Medica as the UN Refugee Agency says more than 4 million refugees have fled the country since Russia began the war. More than 2.3 million have arrived in Poland, but many have travelled onward to other countries or back into Ukraine. Aid workers say the numbers have eased in recent days as many people await developments in the war. An estimated 6.5 million people have also been displaced from their homes within the country. An international disaster relief charity helping Ukrainians in Eastern Europe says it is prepared to scale up its operations if the influx of refugees continues. Shelterbox has spent weeks helping in Ukraine, Poland and Moldova since the Russian invasion began. The charity said it expects the number of people reaching the Ukrainian borders to increase as the war continues, despite reports that many have already started returning home.
I talked to a woman yesterday who fled with her 4 small children, and really just a very emotional conversation, having to kind of pack a few clothes. That's all they were able to bring with them. You know, it's incredibly stressful leaving family behind, not knowing what's next, not knowing, you know, once you get over the border, where you go, what you do. A lot of the things that we've heard are, you know, people have had to leave their jobs, so they no longer have a steady income coming in. But then there's a question of, you know, how long are you staying here? Can you get a local job here? By and large, everybody wants to be able to go home.
International relations and politics expert at Loughborough University, Afzal Ashraf, gave his thoughts on the direction of the conflict, saying there are only 2 ways this can be resolved.
One is through a peaceful resolution, which I can't see happening unless the Ukrainians accept neutrality, which they've indicated they will under certain conditions, and it's those conditions that I think need to be ironed out. The second thing is that they have to accept, as far as the Russians are concerned, that the territory in the east is no longer negotiable and it won't be part of Ukraine as we know it now. Now, those 2 things which aren't going to be attractive, they're accepted, then there is some hope of a peaceful settlement. The problem here is whether that peaceful settlement will come about or it will end up in a crisis environment. If that peaceful settlement, even if that peaceful settlement comes about, and the Western strategy, if there is one, succeeds in causing Russia unbearable problems through the economic sanctions, that too has been declared by the Russians as an attack on Russia by NATO by other means. And President Putin has been very clear that he has only one resort, ultimately, if he's failing, and that is to use nuclear weapons.
Dr. Afzal Ashraf there. Now to Hawaii, where this Ukrainian family had been on a long-awaited holiday and ended up watching from the islands in shock as war began in their country. Now, weeks later, they remained stranded in Hawaii without access to their home, money or contact with the rest of their family. They found support through the local canoe paddling community, which set them up with a place to stay and raised money online to help get them settled. At this stage, they do not know if they will ever be able to return to their home.
This vacation changed our life. We came to Hawaii at February 16 till March 7. And war began February 24. We don't know about our house, maybe house destroyed, yes. And we all our business last 2 years, and we don't know how we return to Ukraine, what we will do. Yes.
Every day I hope that next day everything will be finished, but it doesn't supposed to be like that, and it's awful. I'm confused, and I can't do anything else except for thinking about the situation. I feel that I'm there with my friends, with my relatives, and this is happening with me too.
We turn our focus now to the animals of Ukraine. Here, a veterinary clinic on the Polish border is treating wounded pets who have been caught in the conflict. A large number of refugees managed to bring their much-loved animals with them. Apart from suffering from a lack of food or water, they have been arriving exhausted from the long journey to the border. Some arrived injured with bone fractures after accidents and gunshots. Jacob Kotowicz is a vet at the ADA Foundation Clinic.
Many animals from Ukraine come to us. Here in ADA Foundation we have animal hub. We examine these animals, cure, and later we decide if they are very ill, they stay here, and another animals cured go to other place in Poland and in Europe. In Ukraine we have very bad situation. I think we also must make place from other animals, because many organizations from the world want to take animals from Ukraine and they just stock on the border.
There we are. Well, other animal rescuers braved ongoing fighting this week to evacuate animals from a farm near Kiev. Rescuers said the animals from the farm had escaped their enclosures during days of fighting between Ukrainian and Russian troops. The farm has been a centre for visitors, and many children would spend time seeing the ponies and ostriches up close before the war began. Rescuers said they loaded 5 trucks with animals and will relocate them to a wildlife centre in Kiev. But for some, it was already too late. They said some still remain at large, scattered in nearby forests. Ukrainian soldiers now control the village, but Russian fighters are not far away. And on the subject of animals, this Ukrainian cat, who went viral on social media in 2019, has escaped to France with his owner. This is Stephane the Cat. His fans include Britney Spears and Hailey Bieber, after a video showing him next to a glass of red wine with Stevie Wonder's "I Just Called to Say I Love You" playing in the background went viral. He and his owner have raised more than £7,000 for charity while fleeing, and they're donating the funds to charities which provide aid to animals affected by the war. The World This Week continues after this short break. As the celebrity world watched on, Will Smith has the Oscar moment no one expected. Hello there, welcome back. You're watching The World This Week from the London Live News team, a review of the main international stories that have broken over the last 7 days. Still to come before 7:30. We'll take you to outer space as the farthest star is spotted this week, plus the Florida monkeys making an unusual location their home. But first, the UK has imposed further sanctions on prominent Russians, including media figures and military leaders this week. It comes as the head of Britain's GCHQ spy agency has warned China not to become too closely aligned with Russia. In a rare public address during a visit to Australia, Sir Jeremy Fleming said President Putin had made a strategic miscalculation over his assault on his neighbour. He said that China's long-term interests are not well served by an alliance with a country that willfully and illegally ignores the international rules of the road.
Russia understands that longer term, China will become increasingly strong militarily and economically. Some of their interests conflict. Russia could be squeezed out of the equation. And it's equally clear that a China that wants to set the rules of the road, the norms for a new global governance, is not well served by close alliance with a regime that willfully and illegally ignores them all. Now, this comes into particularly sharp focus when we think about the future of technology ecosystems and the norms and governance that guide their use. And for me, this is as much about values as it is about the technology. And of course, both are vital to the competitive edge of a country.
Well, also this week, British soldiers have taken up the unusual challenge of sorting and packing 84,000 surplus helmets bound for the Ukrainian military. Working from morning until night, the Cottesmore-based troops are working away in a huge warehouse where the surplus kit has been sent from other military stores around the UK. The task includes physically stripping the helmets of any British Army webbing or identifying badges and packing them up in crates, each holding 100 pieces of headgear. Sergeant Oliver Church is coordinating the work at Donington.
The helmets that have been previously used by the British military, and they're now being repurposed and sent out to Ukraine. The guys behind me are sorting them out into sort of good and bad, if you like, the ones that are serviceable and the ones that aren't serviceable to send out to the guys in Ukraine. So the guys will take off all the military markings on the helmet and checking the inside of them, making sure they are good to go. And then the logistics plan will be passed on past me, and then they'll get sent out to Ukraine.
Sergeant Oliver Church there. Now, the royal family, joined by heads of state from around the world, gathered in Westminster this week for the Duke of Edinburgh's memorial service. Prince Andrew played an unexpectedly prominent role in escorting the Queen into the memorial service in his first public appearance since settling the sexual assault case filed against him by Virginia Giuffre. Also in attendance on the day was Prince George and Princess Charlotte, who made a rare public appearance. They're seen here arriving at the service with their parents, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. On to some other stories now. Schools in 23 countries with 405 million pupils are still partially or fully closed because of COVID, according to the United Nations Children's Fund. The charity UNICEF estimates 147 million children have missed at least half of their in-person schooling. Some vulnerable children, especially girls, have not returned to those schools that have reopened. In March 2020, 150 countries around the world completely shut their schools, with partial closures in a further 10. 2 years later, 19 still have some or all of their schools closed. Shanghai's COVID lockdown has left thousands scrambling to stock up on supplies, while others quarantine in their offices to keep businesses running. After weeks of isolated compound lockdowns, the city of 25 million has now been split into two. Earlier this week, those living in Shanghai's eastern half were told to stay at home, with the western half having entered a lockdown yesterday. The move comes as the city battles a surge in Omicron COVID cases. China's zero COVID strategy has been increasingly challenged by the highly infectious variant. Now, this is the farthest star yet to be discovered by humans. Named Earendel, this super hot, super bright giant formed nearly 13 billion years ago at the dawn of the cosmos. The previous record holder, Icarus, is also a blue supergiant star and formed 9.4 billion years ago. That's more than 4 billion years after the Big Bang. In both instances, astronomers used the Hubble Space Telescope to spot the stars. Earendel shines millions of times as brightly as the sun, and researchers say studying it will be a window into an era of the universe that we are so far unfamiliar with. Now, from one star to another, an Oscar moment no one predicted this week, seen by millions around the globe as Will Smith jumped up on stage and hit comedian Chris Rock in a reaction to a joke made about his wife. Well, the Academy took a few days to give more information, but has now said Will Smith was asked to leave the event after the incident, but refused. Oscars showrunner Will Packer said the Los Angeles Police Department were prepared to arrest Will Smith following his assault of Chris Rock at the awards, saying that Chris Rock had been very dismissive of the options given to him by the LAPD when officers went to speak to the comedian, who was told the incident was classified as battery. Will Smith went on to win the leading actor gong for his role in the movie King Richard. He returned to the stage and gave an emotional speech about the importance of protecting family. Well, a formal review into the incident has been launched to discuss what disciplinary measures will be taken, and the actor will reportedly be given the chance to provide a written defence before the Academy Board meets again on the 18th of the month. Will Smith has since issued a public apology to Chris Rock. The comedian said on Wednesday that he was still processing what happened during his first stand-up show since the incident. Right, to Florida now, where, with the backdrop of an airport, as many as 70 monkeys live in a car park and mangrove forest. The United States has no native monkeys, but these small animals have roamed Dania Beach since the late 1940s after a dozen brought from West Africa fled a now long-closed breeding facility and roadside zoo. The monkeys have become quite the local celebrity, with visitors feeding them despite signs saying that it's illegal to do so. Well, Deborah Williams, a Lynn University science professor, founded the Dania Beach Vervet project in a bid to preserve this unique colony.
It is so unusual, but still very amazing, that you'll see monkeys from Africa in an urban setting near the airport, near Port Everglades, where people park their cars, and just here comes a monkey walking along. They're not aggressive. They're just out and about conducting their business like you or I would. So it's really about learning to share space with a monkey. And that's not something that you see here in the US very often, right?
There we are. Well, I'd rather bump into one of those in a car park than the alligators that Florida is known for. And that's all from The World This Week with Alicia Edwards. We'll see you at 7 next Saturday as we round up the biggest international stories from a global city.